D-Day for us had been the 6th of May. D-Day for Europe was the 6th of June, 1944. Derek and I were sometimes able to get away together and stay at my father's house. One day he was jumpy as hell, but I didn't know why. The invasion was imminent. There was a terrific gale blowing, and he never slept a wink. He kept getting up and going to the window to check the storm force winds and look at the sky. All night heavy aircraft, some towing gliders, were droning southwards overhead. Then they all came back again. It was the invasion, delayed for 24 hours. Derek was on tenterhooks, as the weather had been terrible for days. Unlike me, he knew that the troops who would hit the beaches were already packed in their boats, awaiting General Dwight Eisenhower's signal to go. Derek left at the crack of dawn to go back on duty with 2nd TAF, while I went to my ferry pool. My only job, of all things on that most exciting and historic of days, was to dawdle along the south coast with a piffling little AOP Auster 5, NJ616 Army spotter plane, from Hamble to 126 Wing at Tangmere, to replace theirs, which had been blown over by the gales. Later that evening, I flew an FAA Albacore from Hamble to Eastleigh. Whilst I was tootling along the coast, I saw tanks still moving on the roads, going to be loaded onto ships in the ports. Bailey Bridge sections were also being towed out to the ships. Hundreds of tanks, trucks, Bren gun carriers, jeeps and equipment, not to mention thousands of soldiers, had been parked and billeted in the woods and surrounding countryside around Southampton, Hamble and Gosport. I saw all the boats going out. Ships seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see across the channel. I also made out the huge Pluto pipeline under the ocean, cotton reels, holding up the oil pipeline, bobbing about in the rough sea, as well as some of the Mulberry prefabricated harbour being floated out towards France. The Allied planning people had decided against taking an enemy-held port. Dieppe in August 1942 had learned them that lesson. This time they were taking their own harbour with them. This was it, the invasion, to push back the enemy into their own country. So many people I knew were in those tanks, those ships, and those bombers and fighters that were once again droning high overhead. I wondered how many friends I would ever see again. The ATA women at Hamble had watched the build-up, and now the invasion was on. With it came the constant noise of bombers, fighters, and fighter-bombers, all heading to and from the beachhead, where history was being made. Derek rang me later that night. Although I didn't say on the telephone what jobs I'd done that day, especially as it was only an Auster and an Albacore, I mentioned vaguely that I'd been in the air, flying along the south coast. Because security consciousness was drummed into all of us, not least by the poster, "Careless talk costs lives," I did not tell him what I had watched. He just said, "I suppose you got in the way." The Spitfires and Typhoons were attacking targets along the French coast every day, as they had been doing for weeks, as well as gun positions, radar stations, and the tiny construction sites, which we later came to know as V-1 rocket launching sites. These had begun to spring up like mushrooms in the first half of 1944. They were well defended with masses of light anti-aircraft guns, so were pretty dangerous things to go for. Just 6 days after the invasion began, the rocket bombs began to be fired towards England. We ferry pilots were to see any number in the air. As D-Day approached, and afterwards, the wastage in aircraft was amazing, especially among the Typhoon squadrons, who now added Army support sorties to their list of operational duties. ATA was kept on its toes. With the present size of the RAF,